I'm joined by retired Captain Tom Lyons, retired from the Quincy Fire Department. He's going to talk about his authorship, his latest book, and it's about public safety. It's about fire safety. So, Captain, welcome back. You are no stranger to Quincy Access Television. You have done quite a bit with us in your capacity at the Quincy Fire Department in the past. You're continuing your, I guess, quest to inform people about fire safety. So welcome, first of all.
And Mark, thank you. And I appreciate being here, as I have in the past, because I have a passion for fire safety, for fire prevention, especially where I experienced what I did experience in my 44-year career.
We'll talk about that. Talk about what led you to a career in fire safety.
Well, interestingly enough, it started when I was a young boy. My grandfather was a Boston firefighter. My father was a firefighter in Quincy, and he would convey to me the causes of certain incidents. This would have been, believe it or not, back into the 50s and 60s when smoke detectors didn't exist. And he would create, long before what you and I are familiar with, the EDITH program, an evacuation program. He would create an evacuation program for my siblings within that home, which was so important because the smoke detectors didn't exist, so you never got earlier notification, in fact, if there was a fire in the house while you were sleeping. But in 1978, consequently, because of the influence within my family, I joined the Quincy Fire Department in Massachusetts. Half of my career lasted around 33 years. I was a firefighter and lieutenant, once again experiencing the devastation of fire, the loss, the lives lost, etc. Had a tremendous impact on me. And when I made captain, they asked me to manage the Fire Prevention Bureau for a city of 92,000. And I did so for the latter half of my career, where I, with members of my team, we attempted to eradicate fire, which would be impossible, to minimize the fires within our city. And through enforcement, through inspections, and then it occurred to me that I grew up with an understanding of fire prevention innately. And most people never had that experience or that exposure. So I decided to write with the cooperation of a local newspaper, the Quincy Sun. I wrote over 200 articles on the subject of fire safety and prevention. That in turn evolved into you and I working. I believe we co-created 40 programs, PSAs, etc., which I understand are still occasionally shown.
They are, and we will get to those in just a moment, just a taste for folks.
Yeah.
Talk about after you left Quincy, you continued.
I continued, and again, that has to do with a passion. And what happened, quite frankly, since 1978, a job became a vocation. It still is for me. This book is a part of that as well. I went on as the fire safety administrator at Dana Farber Cancer Institute in Boston, with 25 locations surrounding the general Boston area. I wrote there as well. My passion kept this 74-year-old man going. No problem with that, because I just love serving. If you have a life of service, what better is there?
We will go to a piece, kind of a compilation of what was done here at Quincy Access Television. But I'm going to start with asking you, and folks in the book, they'll find this out, what the #1 residential fire is currently.
Currently, it is cooking. And it's interesting thing about statistics. It all depends upon what types of fire you group to determine those statistics, because the U.S. Fire Administration will tell you that it's electrical fire is the most common. Most other agencies, and that's because they include portable space heaters in electrical fires. Most reporting systems like MIFRS in Massachusetts and the NFPA system, they will tell you that it is cooking. The interesting thing about a statistics, you go back 12 or 13 years, 60% of those cooking fires were caused because cooking was left unattended. Now those numbers are 49%. But the fact of the matter is, cooking is something to be concerned about, and those statistics on those fires can change considerably.
Well, actually, both of these pieces, which folks will see in just a minute, both are featured or feature cooking, one inside the house and one outside. So we'll go to those, just kind of a snippet of what was produced here at Quincy Access Television with Captain Tom Lyons. We will come back into the studio and continue our conversation in just a moment.
Captain, we are in a kitchen, and we are in front of a stove, and there's a few things that you can tell us about cooking.
Well, you know, to start with, there's no better time spent, I think, than creating good fire prevention habits. And that's just what they are, they're habits. There are things that you can change, there's behavioral habits that you can change that can impact your life in a positive way. Now, for instance, having come in this kitchen, I saw that the homeowner, she had the tea kettle and pans. None of them were on the stovetop. So in the event that one of these burners was left on, you know, being aluminum or an alloy, they could have melted. So this is a safer scene, having someone left. If in fact one of these were turned on, there were no pans actually on the burners. Just a couple of minutes more and it will be perfect. There's nothing like the summertime and cooking outdoors. Oh, hi. I'm Captain Tom Lyons of the Quincy Fire Department, here to discuss grill safety while I prepare a great meal using one. First, start the season by making certain your grill is ready for a long season of use. Check the hose connections for tightness and the hoses themselves for any cracking and weather wear. Make certain the tubing to the heating element isn't clogged by debris, and clean the grill of excess grease.
Well, there you have it. Really just a sample of what was done here at Quincy Access Television with the Quincy Fire Department and Captain Tom Lyons. There's a couple things. You want to expand upon cooking, which I think is great because that was one of the, that we actually led with that, showing the piece.
No, absolutely, and it is the most common cause of fire. In the book, there is a story about a woman I had an occasion to visit. She was in a small condo, roughly around 550 square feet. She was an avid reader. And on top of her stove, she had a stack of the New York Times, covering 2 burners. So very nicely, I suggested that this is something you shouldn't do. That's a behavioral pattern that's going to lead you to the occasion of fire. So she removed them. And I knew she removed them in the future because she contacted me a couple of months later and said, Captain, I am so grateful you told me about that, because I went to work the other day, I left the stove on. Now, there was a behavioral pattern that was innate to her. It was habit. She was willing to change, and it saved her from the devastation of a fire.
Thanks to you, and thanks to this woman listening to you and
Absolutely.
the message, she is now safe.
For the reader to measure themselves, their own habits, their own behavioral patterns against healthy behavioral patterns that will minimize the chances that you will encounter a fire.
That public service announcement, which was about grill safety,
Oh, that
we
was
should
great.
also mention that that won a national award. So congrats to you. That was you. That looked like you, right? It
To
just
us.
didn't have a nose.
Without
that's
the
all.
nose. And there were all sorts of comments. Everybody loved the content. They learned by it. You would hear, so I didn't know that. But they said, where's the nose? Where's the nose?
You looked better without the nose.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very
A
much.
nose is very hard to draw.
My wife might agree with you, by the way.
And I think one of the things about that public service announcement was it was important information, but it was delivered in such a lighthearted manner as to make maybe a greater impact or an impact of a different kind.
Yeah, and I agree. I think it's the flavor that I usually share these messages with, and I truly mean that. I've gotten feedback about the book, and I hear terms of a folksy style. Someone suggested, seriously, that I was sitting in a rocker on a porch, and you were conveying the wisdom of a safer household. via that method. That PSA was extremely well received, and I think it had a very important message, and grateful to this day that in fact we co-created it.
Let's talk about your upcoming presentation at the Thomas Crane Public
I look
Library.
forward to it, yes.
That's happening on Wednesday, April 19th from 7 to 8 p.m.
It's for the most part, it's going to be what you and I have discussed here, with the exception I will read excerpts of the book, just so people can get a sense of the flavor of how the information is translated. And I will have a list of topics that I will talk about, and to see if people are interested. And I'm sure there'll be questions. I encourage questions because it enlivens my presentation, quite frankly.
Well, I think the years that you served in this, in relation to fire safety, whether it was as a firefighter educator, an educator at Dana Farber,
yeah.
I think all that lends itself to really making contact with folks.
Oh, I do. I miss it tremendously. I used to give thousands of presentations at Dana Farber, and I encourage questions. And I would attempt, and what you and I haven't discussed, there's an optimistic wish out there with people, and it's pretty innate that people say, you know, it's not going to happen to me. I try to bridge that gap to suggest that, you know something, I've witnessed the fact that it can happen. That's my frustration. But here's all you have to do to minimize its occurrence, or how to address it or to evacuate a fire should it occur. So I love those opportunities. You know, the people who were the most enthused about those presentations were the people who have experienced fire. It was real to them. And every presentation, they would come up to the auditorium, they would come up to the head of the stage, and they wanted to convey their message.
I'm glad you said that, because no one is immune.
No one is immune. You're absolutely right. That's why I get so frustrated. And much of my energy, I think, comes from that frustration, because so many of these fires are senseless. Senseless. You and I could sit down and go through every fire in this book without conveying fear, but conveying practical behavioral patterns to avoid the mistakes that others have made.
Practical behavioral patterns.
Yes.
Well said. I want to congratulate you on writing the book.
Thank you.
Again, a great read for folks. And I really want to congratulate you and thank you for your efforts in your whole career.
Yeah, I've lived this. I appreciate this. If you can connect with something and a job becomes a vocation, you're one lucky individual. And the passion is still there. I'm not giving up, obviously. And I hope to still contribute elsewhere. But meanwhile, I'm very, very grateful for all the work you and I have done. I think it's made a tremendous impact on the city of Quincy. I genuinely do. And thank you for having me today. And
lastly, there is a website where folks can contact you.
Yes, the website is C-A-P-T, Lyons, L-Y-O-N-S, 93 at gmail.com.
So folks are interested in the book, they could certainly contact you, or aspects of the book. You certainly would respond to that.
I certainly will. I can tell them how it can be mailed to them, and if they have questions regarding fire safety, etc., feel free to reach out to me.
Very good. Thanks again for joining me.
Thank you, Mark.
And writing a great book.
Thanks so much.